You just did something small, but it touched someone who could completely change your life, and you haven't realized it yet. Someone just saw you, but not the way everyone else sees you. They saw the strongest, deepest, and truest part of you. There are moments in life that seem small on the surface. A glance, a message, a whisper that barely disturbs the air, and yet they change everything. That's how it begins. Not with thunder, but with silence. You don't notice it at first, but something in the fabric of your life shifts, like the faint tremor before a launch. And when you look back, you realize that was the moment. The spark that altered the trajectory of everything that would follow. Elon Musk, the name people tie to rockets and revolution, knows this better than anyone. But behind every ignition, there was a cost no one saw. Behind every success headline, a night so quiet, it felt like eternity was holding its breath. People see the explosion of light. They don't see the silence before it. They see the launch, not the loneliness. The dream, not the doubt. He once said that to build the future, you must sacrifice the present. But he didn't say how much it hurts to live that truth. How progress can sound like applause on the outside, but like an echo of emptiness on the inside. How reaching for the stars can also mean letting go of hands that once held you down to earth. I want you to imagine him in those early mornings, before the world wakes. The screens glow in the dark, data streaming like constellations only he can read. His eyes move, his mind spins. But his heart stands still, waiting for something human. Somewhere between equations and propulsion, there's a whisper he can't escape. Is this what destiny feels like? Or is this what loneliness becomes when it wears the mask of purpose? Creation is not kind. It demands everything. It takes the pieces of your soul and melts them into machinery, into vision, into light. But it also leaves you hollow in the places that once held warmth. He learned that the higher you build, the thinner the air becomes and the lonelier the silence gets. Yet, even in that silence, something awakens. A realization, fragile but fierce. That creation was never just about invention, it was about reflection. That every machine built was an echo of the heart that made it. Every rocket reaching upward was a message to something or someone he lost along the way. He begins to understand that progress without meaning is just motion, that what he truly seeks is not another world, but a reason to keep breathing in this one. Because deep inside, every creator lives a question they're too afraid to ask. If I reach the stars, and there's no one left to share it with, what have I really built? He remembers the first time he looked up and saw Mars not as a goal, but as a mirror, a reflection of everything he loved and lost. A red scar in the night sky, beautiful, distant, untouchable, just like the life he left behind to chase it. And that's the paradox of brilliance. The more light you create, the more shadows you cast. Every dream comes with its echo, every invention with its silence, every discovery with its cost. He doesn't regret it, but he feels it, deeply. Every sleepless night, every missed call, every maybe later that turned into never. The stars remember, even when the world forgets. This is not a story of machines. It's a story of a man who learned that to ignite the future, you must first burn pieces of yourself. And though he built rockets to escape gravity, he could never escape the weight of being human. Because sometimes, the true launch isn't upward. It's inward into the depths of what it truly means to feel. Success is louder than truth. It drowns out everything, the quiet doubts, the fading laughter, the memory of what once made you human. People cheer, cameras flash, but inside, the silence expands. Elon learned that the higher you rise, the more your voice echoes back from empty space. He used to think achievement would fill the void, that if he built enough, invented enough, conquered enough, the loneliness would disappear. But he was wrong, because loneliness doesn't fade with noise. It grows in it. It hides behind the applause, waiting for the moment the crowd leaves and the lights go out. Then it speaks softly, cruelly reminding him that brilliance is never enough to replace belonging. There are nights when he stands in front of the window, city lights flickering below like artificial stars. He thinks about how strange it is that a man can reach space but still feel galaxies away from another heart. The world calls it success. He calls it distance. Every milestone is another step away from the life he once knew, a home he no longer remembers, a warmth he can no longer touch. People tell him he inspires them, that his work gives hope, and maybe it does. But sometimes he wonders what kind of hope costs this much. He built machines to connect worlds, but somewhere along the way, he disconnected from his own. He recalls laughter faint, but sharp in memory. It came from someone who believed in him before the world did. The way she smiled when he spoke about stars, the way she looked at him as if he already belonged among them. Now, that memory feels like a dream from another life, one that ended quietly, without goodbyes, replaced by headlines and deadlines. Isolation doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, one missed dinner at a time, one postponed message, one moment of choosing the future over the present. And before you realize it, you've built a world where everyone knows your name, but no one truly knows your heart. He often stares at his reflection, not out of vanity, but disbelief. The man in the mirror looks accomplished, unstoppable. But behind his eyes lies a quiet exhaustion, the kind that no amount of innovation can erase. He once believed loneliness was a price worth paying. Now he wonders if it was a trade he never fully understood. There's a kind of silence that feels heavier than sound, the silence of having everything, yet feeling nothing. It's the stillness after a launch, the calm after creation. It's standing in the middle of everything you built and realizing the one thing missing is connection. For Elon, success became a paradox. The more he reached, the further he drifted. And in that drift, he discovered a truth too painful to admit. The universe is vast, but the space inside a human heart is vaster still. He used to chase light. Now, he just wants warmth. The difference, he's learning, is everything. Because sometimes, it's not the distance between planets that hurts the most. It's the distance between two souls who once looked in the same direction and no longer do. He remembers her voice, not the words, but the tone, the way it softened the air, grounding him when his mind was orbiting elsewhere. She never needed to understand every calculation or equation. She only needed to remind him to rest, to eat, to breathe, and he didn't listen. Not because he didn't care, but because he thought there would always be more time. There never is. The truth is, he didn't lose her all at once. Love rarely leaves in a single moment. It fades in fragments, in the unanswered texts, the postponed dinners, the quiet goodnights that turn into silence. You tell yourself it's temporary, that after the next launch, the next breakthrough, the next impossible task, you'll make it right. But then one day, she's gone, and you realize that time doesn't wait for those who postpone love. He once said that failure was the greatest teacher, but this kind of failure doesn't appear in graphs or reports. It lingers in memories, the smell of her coffee, the sound of her laughter echoing in rooms that no longer feel alive. The equations still balance, the rockets still fly, but nothing replaces the warmth of someone who once whispered, "I believe in you," before the world ever did. There are nights when he replays those moments, the way she'd touch his shoulder while he worked, the quiet way she'd look at him when he forgot how to smile. It was love in its simplest form, the kind that doesn't demand to be understood, only felt. But genius has a cruel flaw. It often mistakes intensity for presence. He was always there, but never with her. Now, In the stillness of his success, her absence feels louder than any applause. Every launch reminds him of what he sacrificed. Every countdown feels like a heartbeat he can't return to. He doesn't talk about it. The world wouldn't understand. They see rockets. He sees memories turn to dust. Sometimes he wonders if she ever looks up at the sky, sees the trail of fire, and thinks of him. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. But he knows one thing for certain. Everything he's built since then has been, in some way, a message to her, a signal into the infinite, saying, "I'm still here. I'm still trying to reach you." He knows she'll never answer. But that's not the point anymore. The point is that love, even when lost, becomes energy. It transforms, lingers, and fuels what we create next. The love he lost didn't end. It became light scattered across everything he's touched since. And maybe that's what loss really is, not the end, but the beginning of understanding. Because in losing her, he discovered a truth more powerful than any invention, that the human heart can break and still build, can shatter and still shine. He built rockets to reach the stars, but it was love that taught him how to touch eternity. Time moves forward, but memory doesn't. It lingers looping like an orbit that never breaks. Elon has built machines that can escape gravity, yet there are memories he can never rise above. They pull him back, soft but relentless, like the unseen hand of the past, reminding him that even in progress, there is always something left behind. Sometimes, when the world grows quiet, he drifts back to the moments before everything changed. The small apartment, the hum of early ideas, the late nights filled not with noise, but with laughter. The scent of rain against the glass while he scribbled designs on paper that smelled faintly of coffee and hope. Those were the nights when dreams felt like companions, not demands. He thinks about how simple everything was before ambition grew teeth, how love didn't have to compete with purpose, how success hadn't yet asked for sacrifices it could never return. Back then, he was a boy who believed the sky was within reach, and the stars they were promises, not destinations. Memory is strange. It doesn't ask for permission. It arrives when you least expect it. A certain song, a flicker of light, a shadow moving across the floor, and suddenly, you're there again, standing in a moment you thought you'd forgotten. Elon knows this feeling well. It's not nostalgia. It's gravity. The pull of something that once made you whole. He often wonders if greatness always comes with ghosts. Every invention, every breakthrough, a monument not just to success, but to the things you could never keep. He remembers standing beside her once, under a sky so clear it looked infinite. She said, "You'll change the world." He smiled, not knowing that in doing so, he would lose the one who made his world feel small enough to hold. Now, when he looks at the stars, he doesn't see possibilities. He sees memories suspended in time, each one a reminder of what it cost to get here. The world celebrates the destination, but he still mourns the departure. He understands now that progress and memory are enemies that live inside the same man. One demands you move forward, the other keeps you tethered to where you began. And maybe that's why he still looks up not for exploration, but for reconciliation, to make peace with the boy who once dreamed and the man who became the dream. Because no matter how far he goes, memory always finds him. It's the quiet gravity that reminds him of who he was before the noise, before the applause, before the stars became lonely. And in that remembering, he finally understands the past isn't something to escape. It's the orbit that keeps your heart from drifting too far from what's real. For years, he thought meaning lived in milestones in the next launch, the next invention, the next impossible thing made real. But one night, as the world slept and the machines around him hummed in quiet obedience, Elon realized that achievement without connection feels like speaking into space, loud, brilliant, and utterly alone. He used to believe that his purpose was to lead humanity beyond its limits. Now he sees that purpose means little if it doesn't bring people closer. What good is conquering distance between planets when the distance between hearts keeps growing? There was a time he thought connection made him weaker, that emotions slowed him down, distracted him from progress. But he was wrong. Connection is not the opposite of progress. It is the reason for it. Every breakthrough he ever made was born from longing a desire not just to reach, but to be reached. Not just to build, but to belong. Sometimes he thinks about the people who believed in him, not for what he built, but for who he was before the world claimed him. The old friends who saw his exhaustion and stayed anyway. The strangers who whispered, "Keep going," when he was one failure away from collapse. They were the unseen hands holding his world together while he tried to build new ones. He once saw the world as a system: equations, code, combustion, thrust. Now he sees it as something far more fragile, a network of souls, each holding the others in balance. You remove one connection, one small act of kindness, one moment of grace, and everything starts to fall apart. There's a strange peace that comes when you realize success doesn't save you, people do. Not their applause, not their validation, but their presence. The quiet kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. The kind that reminds you you're still human when the world treats you like a machine. He remembers one message he once received years ago, a stranger thanking him, saying that something he built gave them hope. It was short, barely a sentence, but it stayed with him longer than any award, because for the first time, he felt something deeper than pride. He felt connection, that invisible thread that ties meaning to motion. He now understands that invention was never just about technology. It was about love, expressed through creation, through care, through the stubborn belief that humanity is worth saving, even when it breaks your heart to try. For a long time, Elon thought he was chasing the future. But maybe the future was always chasing him, trying to bring him back to the simplest truth, that no dream, no idea, no empire is worth anything if it costs the warmth of another soul. And maybe, in the end, connection isn't found in the noise of discovery, but in the silence that follows when the engines stop, the lights dim, and all that's left is two people who still choose to see each other through the dark. Progress has a sound. It isn't the roar of engines or the applause of a crowd. It's quieter, like the hum of something beautiful dying so something greater can live. Elon knows that sound well. It's the sound of sacrifice, the trade between what you love and what you believe the world needs. Every generation has its inventors, its dreamers, its ones who push too far. But behind every innovation there's a private cost, a version of the self that never returns. For him, it was the laughter that used to fill rooms now replaced by the echo of machines. It was family dinners turned into phone calls, and phone calls turned into silence. It was the look in someone's eyes that said, "I miss who you were," when he no longer knew who that was. He didn't set out to lose himself. But greatness doesn't ask for permission. It demands pieces of you, one by one, until what's left is a man standing in the glow of everything he's built, wondering if the light is worth the loneliness it casts. He remembers the first time a rocket failed, how the explosion painted the sky with everything he'd poured into it. People saw failure. He saw reflection. Because every failure outside mirrored the ones inside, the friends he'd drifted from, the love he didn't have time to save, the parts of himself he had to burn to keep going. Sometimes he tells himself that sacrifice is noble, that it's the cost of progress. But other nights, he questions it, wonders if humanity needs saving from its limitations or from its endless hunger to transcend them. Maybe, he thinks, the stars were never meant to be conquered, only understood. He sees it now that progress and peace rarely coexist. One must quiet for the other to rise. And so he keeps moving, not because he wants to, but because stopping feels like betrayal to every failure, every sacrifice, every soul who believed that pain could somehow build a better world. He carries that weight not with pride, but with acceptance. The kind that comes when you realize some dreams require you to vanish into them, to give everything until you become the story, not the storyteller. But beneath that acceptance, there's still a whisper, a question that never leaves him. What if progress didn't need to cost so much? What if we could reach the stars without losing the people who made the journey worth it? He doesn't know the answer. Maybe no one ever will. But he hopes that one day, when humanity stands beneath a foreign sky, they'll look up and remember not just the rockets, but the hearts that lit the way. Because behind every great leap forward, there's always a quiet goodbye. There comes a moment when even the dreamer grows tired of chasing light, when the stars, once symbols of destiny, begin to look like mirrors reflecting not what lies ahead, but what has always been within. Elon has lived most of his life reaching upward, but lately he's begun to realize that transcendence isn't about leaving Earth behind. It's about returning to it whole. For years, he thought transcendence meant defying limits. Now he understands it's about dissolving them. The line between success and surrender, between science and soul, between the man and the mission, all of it was drawn by fear. Fear of insignificance. Fear that if he stopped moving, the silence would catch him. But now, in that very silence, he has found something sacred. He stands alone in a control room long after everyone's gone. The screens still flicker with data from the stars, but his eyes drift to the faint reflection of himself, older, quieter, softer. For the first time, he doesn't see a machine of ambition. He sees a man who tried, a man who fell in love with humanity, even when humanity couldn't love itself. There's peace in that. Not the loud peace of success, but the subtle kind that hums beneath regret. The peace that comes when you no longer fight the gravity of your own heart. He used to think peace was something earned after conquest, but now he knows peace is what arrives when you stop conquering. He realizes that the universe isn't asking for more noise, more fire, more reaching. It's asking for stillness, for awe, for remembrance. Every atom in every star, every heart that ever beat, comes from the same beginning. That's the truth hidden in the cosmos, not domination, but belonging. He steps outside. The night stretches infinitely, but it no longer feels cold. The stars don't look distant anymore. They feel close, almost intimate. Each one a reminder that everything he's ever sought was already connected. In that moment, he whispers something only the universe can hear. It was never about reaching you. It was about remembering I was part of you all along. And suddenly, everything makes sense. The failures, the solitude, the endless pursuit. None of it was wasted. Every scar was a constellation. Every silence, a signal. Transcendence isn't an escape from the human condition. It's the acceptance of it. The realization that to be small is not to be powerless, but to be part of something vast and alive. He looks up one last time, not as an engineer, not as a visionary, but as a human being, fragile, fleeting, forgiven, and for the first time, the stars don't demand anything of him. They simply shine, as if to say, "You've already arrived." In the end, it wasn't the rockets or the numbers that stayed with him. It was the quiet, the kind that follows the applause, the launches, the victories, the kind that fills the spaces between one heartbeat and the next. Elon used to fear that silence. He thought it meant the end of purpose, of relevance, of the momentum that defined his existence. But now, he sees it differently. The silence isn't empty. It's full of echoes, lessons, moments that never left. It's the sound of a life lived in motion, finally learning how to rest. He remembers the faces, the ones who walked beside him for a while and then disappeared into their own journeys. He remembers the ones he couldn't hold on to, the ones he hurt without meaning to, the ones who saw him not as an icon, but as a man stumbling towards something he didn't yet understand. He wishes he could thank them, not for staying, but for leaving, because their absence taught him the most sacred truth, that love doesn't end when people part. It changes form. It lingers, like starlight, long after the source has burned away. He looks around the quiet hangar, the same place that once roared with creation. Now it hums softly, like a memory breathing. Every bolt, every blueprint, every mark of his hands still holds the weight of who he was. But he no longer clings to them. He lets them be. Because he finally understands legacy isn't what you build, it's what remains when you stop building. For a man who spent his life chasing the infinite, acceptance feels like the final frontier. To simply exist, to breathe without reaching. To look at the sky and know that even if the stars forget his name, his light, however brief, was part of theirs. He once believed immortality was written in achievements. Now he knows it's written in moments of quiet connection in every soul he touched without realizing it. In every stranger who whispered, "I believe," because he once dared to. The universe doesn't reward perfection. It rewards persistence and surrender. He has given both. So he sits, finally still. No plans, no projections, no deadlines. Just the soft hum of the universe. The faint memory of a voice that once said, "You're not alone." And in that soundless expanse, he feels at peace. Not because he reached the stars, but because he learned to love the space between them. If you listen closely, you can hear it too. Not the thunder of rockets, not the applause of millions, but the quiet heartbeat of a man who has finally come home. He sits beneath the quiet hum of a world he helped create, and for the first time, he does not reach for anything. Not for the stars, not for perfection, not for another tomorrow. Elon has spent a lifetime running toward the infinite, only to discover that peace was never ahead of him. It was waiting behind, in the places he once overlooked. He looks back now, not with regret, but with understanding. Every failure, every silence, every goodbye, they were coordinates leading him here, to this stillness, to this fragile kind of clarity that only comes after the storms have passed. He realizes that the greatest inventions were never rockets or cars or machines. They were the moments of connection between souls, the small sparks that remind us we are more than metal and motion. He knows he cannot hold on to everything, not the people who left, not the years he lost to ambition, not the versions of himself that burned away in pursuit of light. But perhaps that is what love truly is, the courage to let go, and still hope that somewhere, in another time or another sky, what was meant will find its way back. The stars remain distant, silent, eternal. Yet tonight, they don't feel cold. They feel alive, as if whispering that even the loneliest dreamer was never really alone. And if this spoke to your heart, stay a while. There's more waiting in the silence.